What is going on, everybody? Today we will be going over my grades for all 32 teams in the 2023 NFL Draft. The draft obviously concluded this weekend, and it was as crazy and wild as we could have expected. A lot of things that we anticipated did happen, and we had some major surprises as well, which ultimately led to a really fun draft weekend. But today, I'm going to be handing out my grades for every team across the league, and we're going to be ordering it from best to least. So the first team I cover will be, in my opinion, the best draft, and then we'll be going down the board from there. So let's not waste any time and hop right on into it. Every year I give out one A+ grade. I think this mark goes to the team who had the best draft out of anybody. And this year, I'll be honest, there were legitimately 5 or 6 teams in the conversation to get an A+ grade for me. There were a lot of teams who had really, really good draft classes, but ultimately we can only name one. And for me, I've got to give it to the Arizona Cardinals. The way they were able to navigate up and down the draft board, they found good value on all 3 days. We'll start with what they did in the first round. Will Anderson would have made a lot of sense with the 3rd pick, but I think what they ended up doing might have been even better. They moved down to 12. They get an absolute king's ransom from the Houston Texans, which included a high 2nd round pick and Houston's first next year, which very well could be a top 5 to 10 pick. They then used pick 12 and that 2nd rounder to move up and get Paris Johnson, the tackle out of Ohio State. Now, I had Peter Skoronski a little bit higher in my personal rankings compared to Paris Johnson, but I have no problem with this. Johnson has a very high ceiling, and he'll be able to start right away, whether it's at tackle or guard. For Arizona, I assume it would be tackle. He has Kyler Murray's stamp of approval, and I never have a problem with you adding big-time offensive linemen early in the draft to help out your team. I thought they had a great day, too. B.J. Ojulari, to me, is a fringe first-round player, so to get him towards the middle of the 2nd round is really, really good value. He's going to be able to come in right away and be one of your better pass rushers. And then in the 3rd round, Garrett Williams and Michael Wilson are 2 very high upside players if they can stay healthy. Injuries have been the concern with them. Garrett Williams is coming off a torn ACL, while Michael Wilson has just had a hard time staying healthy, period, throughout his career at Stanford. But both of them are extremely talented prospects. And then even day 3, John Gaines is a good value pick in the 4th round. I don't mind Clayton Tune. There probably were other quarterbacks who I would have taken over him. Owen Popo is an interesting athletic project. So overall, I think the Cardinals did an outstanding job. Normally, Arizona is lower in my draft grades, but now that Steve Keim is gone and now they've got Monty Ossenfort leading the way, it really seems like this new regime knows what they're doing. They were able to hold on to DeAndre Hopkins and Budda Baker as well. I'm not sure if those 2 players will eventually be traded or not, but they didn't force anything, and it seems like they're going to wait on those guys to get good value. So all in all, hats off to the Cardinals. I think they did a fantastic job. As I said just a moment ago, there were legitimately 5 or 6 candidates for that A+ grade, the Steelers being one of them. And I think in a normal year, they would have gotten my A+, if not for the Cardinals having such a great draft. Going into this draft, the Steelers had clear needs at offensive tackle and corner, and I figured they would walk away with one of the better offensive tackles or one of the better corners, but they're going to walk away with both. They moved up for Broderick Jones. I like that move for them. He would have made a lot of sense with the very next pick to the New York Jets. Go up and get your guy. Broderick Jones is my number 1 offensive tackle on the board at that point, and he's got a higher ceiling than probably any offensive lineman in this draft. And who better than the Pittsburgh Steelers, a team who's proven to developing offensive linemen before. Joey Porter Jr. is a guy who would have made a lot of sense for them in the 1st round, but he made it all the way to the 2nd round. I was a little worried the Steelers weren't going to pick him because it felt too obvious, but they still did. Home run there for the first couple of picks, and then after that, again, capitalizing on value. Keanu Benton in the middle of the 2nd round I thought was a really strong pick. Outside of Jalen Carter, the next 5 interior defensive linemen for me really could have been ranked in any order. And some of those guys, like Kalijah Kancey, Mazie Smith, and Brian Brzee, all went in the 1st round. So for the Steelers to get, in my opinion, a prospect who's basically equal to those guys in the 2nd round is really, really good. They took advantage of Darnell Washington falling down draft boards. I think teams were concerned with the medical. If he could stay healthy, that could be a total steal. I think him and Pat Freiermuth can complement each other pretty well because they've got different skill sets. Washington is a phenomenal blocker and somebody who's got real upside as a receiver. Day 3, I thought they did really good as well. Nick Herbig's an intriguing pass rushing prospect out of the University of Wisconsin. And again, who better than a team like the Pittsburgh Steelers to try to develop a raw developmental edge rusher? And then Corey Trice in the 7th round is ridiculous value. Again, the medical was the concern with him. That's why he fell. But all around, the Steelers had a phenomenal draft head to toe, and they're going to get an A grade. It was pretty clear what the Indianapolis Colts had to do in this draft, and that was to go and get a quarterback. Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud were both off the board for them, but I think Anthony Richardson here with the 4th pick is as good of a selection as they could have made. I like him as a prospect over Will Levis, so ultimately I think that is the right choice for the Colts. The one concern I have is I don't want them to rush Anthony Richardson, and with Gardner Minshew as the only other starting caliber quarterback they have, I have a feeling Anthony Richardson's going to start a few too many games this year, but I do like this landing spot for him. Steichen's development with Jalen Hurts was obviously quite good, and I think he can develop Anthony Richardson into a great player as well. But the real reason why the Colts are getting an A is because of all their other picks down the board. In the 2nd round, Julius Brents, the corner out of Kansas State, a long, lengthy corner. I'm very happy with that pick for them. In the 3rd round, Josh Downs, the wide receiver out of North Carolina, is a total steal. He should not have made it that far. He's a little bit undersized, more of a slot guy, but I think he'll fit this offense and this receiving core really well because all of the Colts' best receivers are these big guys like Michael Pittman, Alec Pierce, and all the tight ends they've got. They needed a small, shiftier route runner, and that's exactly what Josh Downs is. They had a phenomenal day 3 as well. Blake Freeland is an intriguing offensive tackle prospect with high upside who's worth a swing in the 4th round. Adetomiwa Adebawore is a total steal. And again, as I just talked about with Keanu Benton, I would lump in Adebawore with those second cluster of interior defensive line prospects. And I think, again, he's equal to some of those guys like Kancey, Smith, and Brzee who were picked in the 1st round. So for the Colts to get him in round 4 is phenomenal. I think he slipped a little bit later than expected because he is quite raw, but he is a total freak. Darius Rush, good corner, good size and length, converted wide receiver, has good ball skills. I think that's a really good pick in the 5th round. Jalen Jones out of Texas A&M is a steal in the 7th, a guy who's got experience at corner and safety. So overall, just a phenomenal draft for the Indianapolis Colts. Chris Ballard, who should still be on the hot seat, might have bought himself more time with the quarterback, but not just Richardson. I think Ballard and the rest of the group did a fantastic job this year. Everybody is anointing Eagles GM Howie Roseman as a total genius, and, well, I can't blame him because he kind of is. Howie Roseman had another fantastic draft here. They moved up one spot for Jalen Carter. Obviously, one of the most talented players in the draft. He's got the character question marks, but when he's on the field, he's a damn good player. And who better than a team like the Philadelphia Eagles with an established culture and a lot of Jalen Carter's former teammates, including Nolan Smith. I'm not as high on Nolan Smith as others, but at pick 30, I think that's a phenomenal selection. In this 2nd round, they moved back a little bit. They got some more assets. In round 3, Tyler Steen, Sidney Brown, both pretty solid. And then day 3, they crushed it out the park. Kelee Ringo is a high upside developmental corner. He doesn't have to play right away, but has really good physical tools. Tanner McKee in the 6th round is a steal. Moro Ojomo in the 7th round is also a steal. Hats off to Howie Roseman, man. He did phenomenal. And the Eagles will get an A grade from me. I also really like the DeAndre Swift trade for them. He is obviously from Philly. He played high school ball there. When he is healthy, he is talented and explosive. The problem is he's rarely ever healthy. Last year, he played injured. He was a trooper. I'll give him credit. But he was not the same guy when he was injured. He's scared to take on contact. His vision is that of Helen Keller as a runner. So I'm rooting for my guy Swift. I hope he plays well in Philly. And again, he's a really talented player, and they didn't have to give up that much for him. But if Eagles fans are expecting him to be some great running back, I think they're probably going to be disappointed. But I still think it's a good trade, and that does not hurt their grade at all. You talk about doing a lot with a little. That's exactly what the Cleveland Browns did. They did not have a pick until the 3rd round, but they're still going to get an A grade because all of their picks down the board were fantastic value. In round 3, Cedric Tillman, the big-bodied receiver out of Tennessee. Very solid pick in that range. Siaki Ika, solid run-stuffing nose tackle. But it was day 3 that really cemented this draft to be an A grade. DeJuan Jones early in the 4th is a total steal. It seems like there were some questions about his commitment to the game, but as a prospect, he's really, really talented, better than some of the tackles who went early in this draft. Isaiah McGuire from Missouri, I think, is a pretty underrated, versatile defensive lineman. Dorian Thompson-Robinson's a player I'm extremely high on. I really see the potential with him to eventually be a starter in this league, but for now, you get to develop behind Deshaun Watson. He has a pretty similar skill set to that of Watson, so if Watson were to get injured or something, or suspended again, you never know. Dorian Thompson-Robinson is a similar player, so I think the offense would be able to be ran in a pretty similar way. Cameron Mitchell's a freak athlete corner. Doesn't hurt to take athletes on day 3, especially at the cornerback position. Look at Tariq Woolen last year. Luke Whippler, the center in the 6th round, is also great value. And then they did good with the undrafted free agents as well. I think Ohio State safety Ronnie Hickman is one of the more underrated players in this draft class. He's a versatile playmaker in the secondary, who I had as my safety 3. The fact that he did not get picked baffles me, but that's just another good pickup by the Browns, who are going to get an A grade despite not picking until the middle of the 3rd round. Hats off to Andrew Berry and the Browns, because they did fantastic. My last A grade will go to the New York Football Giants. They moved up 1 spot in the 1st round to get Deonte Banks. I think that was a great move. Deonte Banks had no business falling that far. Super talented cornerback. John Michael Schmitz in the 2nd round is ridiculous value. I know the Giants really liked him. He was a guy who I had my eye on for them in the 1st round. And I've said before, I could see a world where John Michael Schmitz drops a little bit because teams overthink him, just like they overthought Creed Humphrey 2 years ago. And look how that's turned out. I'm not saying John Michael Schmitz will become Creed Humphrey, but I think it's pretty similar. And I think Schmitz will be one of the better interior offensive linemen as soon as he signs the contract. They moved up a little bit for Jalen Hyatt, the speedy receiver out of Tennessee. I'm not as high on Hyatt as others, but in the 3rd round, I think that's really, really good. The reason why they are a little bit lower than these top 5 teams is because they didn't do anything that wowed me on day 3, but their first 2 picks were such steals that I still feel compelled to give the New York Giants an A grade. We have no A minuses and are jumping right into B pluses and below. The reason is I felt like those top 6 classes really separated themselves from the rest of the league. The first B plus we have is the Buffalo Bills. I don't love what they did on days 1 and 3. Dalton Kincaid was my tight end 1 in this draft, but I still feel like I was a little bit lower on him than others. I will say the trade up was smart because I'm very confident he would have been the pick to Dallas at 26. So to do that, I get it. And I think they will probably be able to get Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox to complement each other because I think both of them are athletic enough to play in the slot when need be. Day 3 as well. Didn't do anything crazy, but the real reason why they're this high is their day 2. O'Cyrus Torrence in the late 2nd round is ridiculous value. He had no business falling that far. A phenomenal offensive guard prospect who I think is the best interior offensive line prospect probably in the draft. And Dorian Williams in the 3rd. I think he's one of the more underrated players in this class. I had him as my 4th linebacker behind Jack Campbell, Diane Henley, and Drew Sanders. I think that is a steal for Buffalo late in the 3rd. A really talented athlete who was pretty good last year for the Tulane defense. So it's really the Torrance and Williams picks that boost this grade up. But I think Kincaid in the 1st round is fine, and their day 3 was fine enough to ultimately warrant a B+. Despite only having 5 picks, I think the Denver Broncos did a pretty good job in the first draft of the Sean Payton era. They moved up into the late 2nd round to draft Marvin Mims, a wide receiver out of Oklahoma. He's been one of my guys throughout this draft process. I think Marvin Mims is going to be a dog at the next level. He's a little bit undersized, but he can play in the slot. He can play outside. He's a good route runner, good after the catch, good separator. He really checks all the boxes, and I think he's going to be a really good pro at the next level. Drew Sanders in the 3rd is an intriguing linebacker prospect, converted from edge. He had a very solid season last year at Arkansas. He's got some refining to do, but I think he could be a good player. Riley Moss is an all-around solid defensive back, whether you put him at corner or safety. Again, I think he's going to be a good pro. And then day 3, I thought they got 2 good value picks with J.L. Skinner, the versatile defensive back out of Boise State, and then Alex Forsythe, the center out of Oregon, a player who I think can really outdo his draft selection. So overall, I thought the Broncos had 5 pretty good picks, and they will get a B+. Everybody seems to be giving the New England Patriots really high grades, and I get it. They had a good draft, but I'm not as high on it as other people. I thought they had a phenomenal first round, though, maybe better than any team on night one. To move back 3 spots and still get Christian Gonzalez is absolutely ridiculous. I do not know how Gonzalez fell to 17. I had him as my number 1 corner in this draft. I think he's a slightly better prospect than Devin Witherspoon. I thought that was a steal by the New England Patriots, probably the best pick on night one. However, the rest of their draft, while it wasn't bad, I don't think it's good enough to warrant anything higher than a B+. I'm not super high on Keion White, but I think, again, I trust Bill Belichick to develop him. He's a little bit raw, but he's a total freak. Marte Mapu's an intriguing player. He just kind of feels like a New England pick, similar to Kyle Duggar a few years ago, a small school, versatile defensive back. And if this pick turns into half of what Kyle Duggar has become, then I think New England's going to be quite happy with it. Their day 3 was fine. They got a lot of offensive linemen. Kayshon Boutte is an interesting dart throw in the 6th round, a talented receiver who, if he wants to be good, I think he absolutely can be. It's just that other than Gonzalez, there wasn't anything that really wowed me after the first round. It was solid after him, but nothing to push them over the edge. But they're still going to get a B+. Overall, still a good draft for the New England Patriots. The Carolina Panthers will be getting a B+ for me as well, and most importantly, I think they got the number 1 pick right. Bryce Young for me is QB1 in this draft. I think he has the chance to be a really, really special player at the next level, and yes, they had to give up a king's ransom in order to get him, but if he can develop into the player that I think he will eventually turn into, it'll be worth it in the end for the Panthers. I don't like to give teams picking number 1 too much credit for getting it right, but the fact that Carolina moved up here and there were multiple quarterback prospects who I imagine they considered, I will give them credit because I think they got it right. The rest of their draft I thought was pretty solid. Jonathan Mingo's an intriguing receiver prospect. I don't have a major problem with it here in the 2nd round. I think he's a player who really can be a good pro. DJ Johnson out of Oregon, I'm a little bit surprised he went that high, but he is a physical freak who could be really good, but he's got some refining to do. And then they only had 2 day 3 picks, but I thought both of them were fine. Chandler Zavala out of NC State and Jamie Robinson from Florida State, no problems there. Carolina's going to get a B+. Overall, pretty solid draft for the Panthers. It seems like a lot of Titans fans absolutely hate their draft, and honestly, I disagree. While I don't think this is like a grand slam, I think it's pretty solid. Peter Skoronski in the 1st round is a really solid pick. He was my number 1 offensive lineman in the draft. Whether you play him at tackle or guard, I think he's going to be a really good pro when it's all said and done. I like the move to go up and get Will Levis in the 2nd round, and I'll admit I'm not a huge Will Levis guy. I do feel, however, he has been one of the most disrespected prospects throughout this draft cycle, and he was by far my QB4. I think the top 3 guys were significant, maybe not significantly, but definitely better prospects than him in my opinion. But I feel like everybody has written Will Levis off to be a bad player when that's just not true. And while he had his struggles last year, he's a physically talented quarterback with a great season in 2021, and he was dealt a bad hand at Kentucky with a poor offensive line and a poor receiving core, but this is somebody with experience in a pro-styled offense who I think can be a good quarterback at the next level. Clearly, the Titans don't believe in Malik Willis, and I understand. Malik Willis did not play very well last year. While he is a project, you also have to realize he's been in the building for a year now. If the Titans don't really see any development from him, then I totally understand moving up to get Will Levis. I was high on Malik Willis last year, and I think I'm going to be wrong about it. Now, could Malik Willis become a good quarterback? I suppose he could, but I certainly wouldn't bet on it at this point. And then other than Levis, I thought the rest of their draft was fine. Tyjae Spears is a really, really good prospect. I'm very high on him. I believe he was my running back 4 in this draft. Now, apparently, he played last year without an ACL in one of his knees. Believe it or not, that is possible to not only function without one, but play without one. So hopefully he can get that all patched up because I think he can ultimately be the long-term replacement here once Derrick Henry is out the door, whether that's this offseason or in the future. I think Tyjae Spears is a really, really good player. And then I thought their day 3 was fine. Josh Wiley is solid. Jalen Duncan's a player who I wasn't super high on, but in the 6th round, I don't really have a problem with it. So overall, I thought the Titans draft was pretty solid, and they're going to get a B grade from me. There's something to be said when you get the best football player in the draft, and the Atlanta Falcons, well, they did that by drafting Bijan Robinson out of Texas with the 8th overall pick. I don't love it because it is a running back, but I think the fit in Atlanta is going to be really, really good. Bijan Robinson is a special player. The Falcons have a very good offensive line. Their head coach, Arthur Smith, has experience with great running backs in great rushing offenses. So I think this is about as good of a landing spot for Bijan as he really could have fallen into. Maybe the Eagles would have been just as good as well, but I really like this spot for him. The Falcons do have Tyler Algier, who they drafted last year, and he had a great rookie year. So that's the one reason why I'm not, in love with the pick, but Bijan's so good. I can't get upset with it at all. Him and Kyle Pitts on the same offense, if those two players develop into their ceilings, oh boy, that could be nasty. I thought the rest of their draft was fine. Matthew Bergeron, ESPN has him listed as a guard here, but I think he's got the size and length to play tackle at the next level. Here in the second round, I'm totally cool with it. Zach Harrison, intriguing developmental pass rusher. Clark Phillips, talented undersized corner out of Utah. Overall, a pretty solid draft. Again, they got the best player in the class in Bijan. Even if he is a running back, I think he's going to be a multiple-time All-Pro. And I don't like to anoint players as Hall of Fame talents, but I legitimately think that is the ceiling for Bijan Robinson. So to have a player who has Hall of Fame talent on your roster, I can't get upset with it. Atlanta's going to get a B grade. A lot of people have graded the Seahawks draft out really highly, and I honestly disagree a little bit. This was the case as well last year. Everybody gave the Seahawks great grades. I gave them more of an okay grade, and I ended up being completely wrong. Seattle's draft class last year was utterly ridiculous. So maybe they'll prove me wrong again. And while I don't think this is a bad draft by any stretch, I don't think it's something spectacular. Devin Witherspoon at 5 was probably the most surprising pick of the first round to me, if not one of. I was shocked when they did that. And I don't think it's a bad pick or anything. I think Devin Witherspoon's a top 10 player in this draft. But I think Christian Gonzalez is a better prospect at the cornerback position. And I thought there were a few other better options there, but I'm not too upset with it. Devin Witherspoon's a fantastic player. I don't have any major issues. Jackson Smith-Njigba at 20, I really like. I think he's a great fit on that offense. In mock drafts I've done in the past, I've had to move up to get him. So the fact that he makes it here to 20 is fantastic value for him. JSN, Tyler Lockett, and DK Metcalf, oh boy, that is nasty. The rest of their draft, however, I didn't love. Derek Hall in the second round, I thought it was a little bit early, but I don't have a major problem with it. Zach Charbonnet was, again, a very surprising pick to me because they have Kenneth Walker. I don't love the fit. I don't think they're going to be great complements for each other. I get Seattle is completely obsessed with drafting running backs. They do this every year, so I shouldn't really be surprised. But I don't know. I just don't feel like it was necessary. Kenneth Walker showed that he can be a bell cow running back last season, so why not draft somebody in the 5th or 6th round, like a Dwayne McBride or something, rather than using big-time draft capital on Zach Charbonnet. He was my 3rd running back in the draft, and he was the 3rd running back off the board, so in terms of value for him in a vacuum, it's fine, but I don't know. I just don't think Seattle should have picked a running back in the 2nd round. And then the rest of their draft was fine. Anthony Bradford, Cameron Young, Mike Morris, Oluwatimi, all solid. Kenny McIntosh in the 7th I thought was really good, though. But again, it just makes the Zach Charbonnet pick even more not needed. So that's why I'm going to give the Seahawks a B. A solid draft, but I don't think it was great. I think the Cincinnati Bengals had an all-around fine draft. I've got my reservations with Myles Murphy, but at pick 28, I'm good with it. He's a freakishly athletic pass rusher who could be really good down the line. DJ Turner, I thought was going to go before that. I'm surprised he went as late as he did. I think that was a pretty good pick by the Bengals. I think the rest of their draft was fine. Jordan Battle's a decent pick in the 3rd round. Charlie Jones, Chase Brown, Andrei Yoshevich, all around pretty solid. They're going to get a B grade from me. All right, this is where things get interesting. I'm going to give the Lions a B grade for their draft. This, by far, is the most interesting draft class to me, and it's not that I am a Lions fan and I'm being biased. Genuinely, this is a very intriguing group. I think that's the word. So, I thought Brad Holmes' process throughout the draft was solid. I think it's pretty clear Devin Witherspoon was going to be the pick at 6. You can't convince me otherwise. So, the fact that he was picked one spot beforehand, the Lions' plan already was disrupted pretty early on. Rather than forcing themselves to make a pick at 6, I like moving down. You add the early 2nd round pick from Arizona. I thought that was a good move. So we get to 12. And I'm good with picking Jahmyr Gibbs. I was good with it at the time, and I'm good with it now. Were there better picks here? Maybe. I thought Christian Gonzalez should have been the selection. I would have been really happy with Lucas Van Ness. There would have been other guys who I would have been probably happier with. But I am not upset with this pick at all. I think Jahmyr Gibbs is a special player. If not for Bijan Robinson, he would be getting so much more hype. I had him as my 7th overall player in the entire draft, and I think other than Bijan Robinson, he is the best running back prospect to come out in years. And I'm not just saying that because he got drafted in my team. You can find the clips. I don't know if it was a mock draft or if it was one of the podcast episodes I did with Nickinator. But I pounded the table for Gibbs 2 months ago. I said, if not for Bijan, he would be getting so much hype right now. I think Ben Johnson's going to be able to scheme him up in a variety of different ways, whether that's out of the backfield or in the slot. I think David Montgomery will get more touches, especially early on. I'm not sure if Jahmyr Gibbs will ever be a full-time running back, but if he can be used like a Christian McCaffrey or a Deebo Samuel, I think this pick would be successful. Obviously, the positional value is not ideal, and if Jahmyr Gibbs does not live up to his ceiling, then this selection will be a major flop. I understand why people don't like it. I think it's more so just that I'm higher on consensus with Jahmyr Gibbs and the fact that I think he will reach his ceiling and make this pick worthwhile. Jack Campbell at 18, the linebacker out of Iowa. I think a lot of people had a few guys in the running for the top linebacker in this class, but for me, Jack Campbell was head and shoulders above everybody else. Obviously, the production, the character, the leadership, off the charts. I think he's a good athlete as well. His relative athletic score was 6th for linebackers since 1987. Is he really the 6th most athletic linebacker since then? No, absolutely not. His stiffness and coverage is a little bit concerning at times, and that can't really be tested by a combine report. But even so, I think it's a good pick at 18. I don't think he would have been able to get him early in the second round because, again, I think he is by far the best linebacking prospect in this draft class. And obviously the culture fit is perfect. He's a Dan Campbell guy through and through. Sam Laporta at pick 34, I'm fine with. I think he's got a pretty high ceiling. I had Michael Mayer graded above him, but I don't really have as much of the problem as other people with him going before Mayer. I still thought it was a little bit early for him, but I don't have a major problem with it. Moving up 3 spots to get Brian Branch, I think that's a home run. Brian Branch to me is a top, bare minimum, 20 player in this draft, maybe top 15. I think he just slipped a little bit because of positional value. He's not some freak athlete or anything, but he can play safety. You can put him in the nickel. I think he's a really good fit here because he can learn behind a guy like Chauncey Gardner-Johnson early on while still making an impact on the field. And eventually he can be the long-term Chauncey Gardner-Johnson replacement because he was only signed to a 1-year deal. The value in the middle of the second round is too good to pass up. The one pick I really don't like that we made was Hendon Hooker, the quarterback out of Tennessee. I'm trying to talk myself into it, and now that he's our quarterback, I'm going to be a fan of his. I really want him to be successful, and believe me, I want to be wrong about him so bad. But I'm just not that high on him as a prospect. That's not really the problem I have with this pick, though. It's not that I'm lower on him. I don't think this is a total reach. In the third round, it's fine. It's not that he's 25 years old. It's not that he's coming off a knee injury. It's really, what's the ceiling for Hendon Hooker? What is his ceiling? Jared Goff, maybe? We already have Jared Goff on the roster. So let's say hypothetically Hendon Hooker gets an opportunity to play within the next year or two, and he's good enough to be the Lions starting quarterback for a little bit. But does he really elevate us higher than Jared Goff does? I don't think so. So that's really the thing that I don't like about this pick. And if we were to go out and get a quarterback, why not go all in, move up to the number 3 pick and get Anthony Richardson? I've been pounding the table for Anthony Richardson to Detroit for months now. I think that would have been the right move in the first round. So that's my complaints with picking Hendon Hooker. Again, in the third round, it's not like some horrible reach. And while him as a player, I think, has a pretty high floor, I think it does potentially limit the ceiling of the team, which does concern me a little bit. The rest of the draft was kind of uneventful. I really don't like giving up 3 day 3 picks, 2 of which were in the top 140, to move up for Broderick Martin out of Western Kentucky. So I think overall the third round for Detroit was pretty bad. But other than that, I'm happy with the rest of the draft. I think we got 4 really good football players in the top 2 rounds. Positional value be damned. We drafted some good football players who are going to be able to make an impact right away. A lot of people are saying these guys aren't going to be able to make an impact. The Lions are this close to being a playoff team and they draft these players. I think that's BS. These are guys who are going to be able to get on the field early on and compete as rookies. Yes, I get the positional value is not great, but Jack Campbell is instantly the best linebacker on the team. Sam Laporta is instantly the best tight end on the team. Jahmyr Gibbs is too good not to be on the field often. Brian Branch, too good to not be on the field consistently. And I'm good with the DeAndre Swift trade as well. To get a 4th-round pick for a guy who would have been gone in a year and was kind of in the doghouse, I'm good with that as well. So overall, I'm pretty happy with the Lions draft. And yeah, that's my rant for Detroit. Right after my favorite team, we've got my least favorite team, the Green Bay Packers, who will also get a B. I will say, I think this is one of the better drafts that Brian Gutekunst has had over the last few years. Does that say a whole lot? No, it really doesn't. But I don't think he did horrible. Lucas Van Ness in the first round, I think is a good pick. I think he's an underrated prospect, and I think top 15 is completely fair value for him. He has some similarities to a guy like Rashawn Gary. I think a lot of people were down on Gary because of the lack of consistent production in college, but I saw the upside with Rashawn Gary, and the Packers have developed him into a great player. I think they're going to do the exact same thing with Lucas Van Ness. I think that's a really good pick. In the 2nd and 3rd round, they got weapons. Luke Musgrave, Jaden Reed, Tucker Kraft. No major complaints with any of those picks. I don't think any of those selections were like super high value picks, but I don't really have a problem with any of them. All solid B-level picks. Day 3, though, they had a lot of picks, and I don't really think they capitalized. Sean Clifford, why did he get picked? Sean Clifford is not good. They had some solid picks in here. Carl Brooks in the 6th round is pretty good. Carrington Valentine's an interesting developmental corner. I thought that was probably the best day 3 pick they made. Anthony Johnson, the safety out of Iowa State, also solid. So I'm going to give the Packers a B grade. I thought they had a great 1st-round pick. Day 2 was solid. Day 3, they got some good picks, but I think they could have done more. I thought the LA Chargers had a solid draft. They'll get a B grade from me. Quinn Johnston in the 1st round is fine. I would have preferred either Zay Flowers or Jordan Addison here, but I don't have a major problem with it. I think Quentin Johnston could be a pretty good player. The reason why I like this draft, though, is their day 2. Tui Tuipulotu and Daiyan Henley are 2 players who I think I'm higher on than consensus. So to get those guys where they did, I thought those were both really good value selections. Day 3, they didn't really do anything that was super noteworthy. I think Jordan McFadden in the 5th round is pretty good, but other than that, nothing too crazy. They're going to get a B. All-around solid draft, but nothing that knocks my socks off. The Baltimore Ravens will get a B-. I thought their draft was okay. Zay Flowers in the 1st round, I don't have a major problem with. He was my wide receiver 2 in this draft, and he was my top receiver on the board. The one problem I have with this pick, though, is corner is kind of a big need for them. Deonte Banks and Joey Porter were right there staring them in the face. I thought those would have been slightly better picks, but I think that's a little bit nitpicky. No major problem with it. Trent Simpson in the 3rd is fine. I think he's an intriguing developmental linebacker. They used a 1st-round pick on Patrick Queen. I think that was kind of a mistake. They declined his 5th-year option today. So clearly it seems like they're looking to move past him, and they're hoping that maybe Trenton Simpson can be what they hoped Patrick Queen was going to be. Day 3 was fine. I really like Andrew Voorhees in the 7th round, a talented guard. He's coming off the ACL tear from the combine workout, but I think he could be a good player in 2024 and beyond. So all around an okay draft for Baltimore, but again, nothing that like super excites me. Although Zay Flowers will be pretty fun in that offense, I won't lie. I think this is a lot lower of the grade than you're going to see normally with the Houston Texans. I will say, though, with their 2 top picks, they drafted the right players with C.J. Stroud and Will Anderson. So just those 2 selections in a vacuum, I think were the correct choices for them. It's just the process of moving up to 3 along with the rest of the draft I didn't love. So at the top of this draft, I wasn't really sure what I thought the Texans would do. I wasn't really in love with C.J. Stroud, but I understand that you kind of have to pick a quarterback. So I think the Texans were kind of in a similar dilemma. They figured rather than deciding, let's just do both. Get the top defensive player in the draft and get the number 1 quarterback off the board. The problem I have with this whole situation is that they gave up a lot to get Will Anderson, and I think Will Anderson's fantastic. I think he's going to be a great player at the next level. He is my number 1 ranked defensive player in the draft, my number 2 player behind Bijan Robinson. But they gave up the 12th pick, which is the top half of the 1st round selection, pick 33 in the 2nd round, or pick 34, same thing, and their 1st round pick next year, which is probably going to be in the top 5 or 10. the fact that they don't need a quarterback makes it like not as big of a deal, but it's still a potential top 5 to 10 pick. I think that's a little bit too much to give, even for a guy like Will Anderson, who's great, but the player they could have gotten with like the 5th pick next year is probably going to be 80% as good as Will Anderson. So I don't love that decision, but Will Anderson's awesome, so I kind of get it. And then the rest of their draft was fine. I thought it was a little early for Juice Scruggs, but I think he's a good prospect. Tank Dell, I think, should be fun in this offense. I do like that pick. And then their day 3. I think a lot of people like their day 3. I don't like it as much. Dylan Horton, I thought that was a little bit early for him. Henry To'oTo'o in the 5th is fine. I'm not that high on him, but in round 5, I guess it's cool. Xavier Hutchinson in round 6 I thought was pretty solid value. I think there are some people who really like Hutchinson. I'm not as high on him, but I think in the 6th round it's fine. So I'm going to give the Texans a B-. I don't love it, but they got 2 really good players in the top 3. So Texans fans, you should still be pretty excited about what you've got going for yourselves. The Miami Dolphins entered the draft with only 4 picks. So with those selections, I thought they did fine. Cam Smith in the 2nd round, I think, is a pretty good pick. I think him there in the middle of the 2nd is great value. I don't think he should have lasted that far. So I think that's a solid pick by the Dolphins. I'm not super high on Devin Achane. There are running backs I like more than him. But to put him on that offense with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, all the speed they've got, now they add probably one of, if not the fastest offensive player in this draft. I think that's pretty fun. Elijah Higgins on day 3 at a Stanford, the big receiver, not too bad. So they're going to get a B-. I really like the Cam Smith pick in the 2nd round. But other than that, I don't love anything else here. I think the Las Vegas Raiders did a solid job. Tyree Wilson in the 1st round, I'm good with that pick. I didn't think he was going to make it to 7, although there were some medical question marks about his foot within the hours leading up to the draft, but clearly the Raiders feel comfortable with it. I think him and Max Crosby together long term is going to be filthy. They moved up for Michael Mayer in the 2nd round. I'm fine with it. I don't love Michael Mayer, but he's going to be a solid player immediately, so I'm good with it. Tight end is a need. Byron Young in the similar boat as a guy who's just going to be a solid pro at the next level. And if that's what you're getting in the 3rd round, then that's pretty good. Nothing else really stood out other than Christopher Smith, the safety out of Georgia in the 5th round. I think he's a pretty high floor player who could be solid at the next level. So all around, not too exciting, but not bad. I'm excited to see what Tyree Wilson does here with Las Vegas. They'll get a B-. The Los Angeles Rams had a fine draft. Steve Avila at the beginning of the 2nd round, I think, is an okay pick. Again, I'm not usually going to complain when you're trying to improve the offensive line. I will say I think Osiris Torrance is a better prospect. I think John Michael Schmitz is a better prospect. So I think those would have been better picks for them, but I don't hate it. Byron Young and Kobe Turner are solid picks in the 3rd round. Again, nothing too exciting, but not bad. I don't know how I feel about Stetson Bennett in the 4th. I think for Stetson Bennett specifically, this is a really good landing spot under Sean McVay. So maybe he turns into something, but there are better quarterbacks on the board. I would have way preferred a guy like Dorian Thompson-Robinson or even somebody else here. But I am intrigued to see what Stetson does at the next level. As you can see, they had a lot of day 3 picks, and I thought they got some solid value here. Warren McClendon in the 5th round, not bad. Davis Allen as well. Puka Nacua. Tre'Vius Hodges-Tomlinson in the 6th is okay. I wasn't as high on Hodges-Tomlinson as others, but in round 6, I think that's pretty good. Zach Evans is a high upside running back. They got him late in the 6th. So overall, again, not like great, but I'm not going to really complain about it either. They'll get a B-. I will say, in defense for the New York Jets, the board did not really play out very well for them at pick 15. 4 offensive tackles were already gone. Apparently, they were highly considering Jahmyr Gibbs as well. And I actually think that's kind of true, considering they drafted Israel Abanikanda, who has some similar strengths to him in the 5th round. So they picked Will McDonald at 15. He's a high upside pass rusher who could be really good. It's a touch early for me, but I don't hate it. I think if he can reach his ceiling with his explosiveness, his size and length, he could be a really good pro. Joe Tippmann in round 2, I'm good with it, but as we talked about with the Rams and Steve Avila, I don't love passing on John Michael Schmitz or Osiris Torrance, but I don't hate it. Carter Warren out of Pitt, he's a solid pick in the 4th round. I really like Israel Abanikanda. He's a player who I am very high on going forward. I think in the 5th round, that's great value. Izzy Abanikanda in round 5 is better value than Jahmyr Gibbs at pick 15. So I think that's kind of worked out well for the Jets. And if Abanikanda can develop, he could be really good. He's one of the youngest players in the draft. He's explosive, and he got the ball a lot last year, and he was dynamic. Zach Kuntz as well, the tight end of Old Dominion. His relative athletic score at the tight end position is first amongst all players since 1987. So he is basically the most athletic tight end ever. So because of that, I think there is some upside. So overall, solid draft. I don't love it, but I don't think it's like bad. The Washington Commanders will get a B-. Again, I don't love it, but I don't hate it. I think 16 is too early for Emmanuel Forbes, considering the other corners on the board. Forbes was my CB6 in this class, and he was the second one off the board. I had Christian Gonzalez, Deonte Banks, Joey Porter Jr., and Tyreek Stevenson all ahead of him, along with Devin Witherspoon, obviously. But Forbes went ahead of all those guys, minus Witherspoon. I do think the fit is pretty good. I think he can be a good player here. Jartavius Martin in the second round I like. He was a player who I was very high on throughout the draft process, a freak athlete, somebody who is super versatile. I think he's far and away safety 2 in this class for me, behind Brian Branch. Ricky Stromberg in the third round is fine. KJ Henry in the fifth round is pretty good. So nothing super exciting here, but it's not terrible. They're going to get a B-. Now we're starting to get towards the drafts that I don't really like too much, and we will start with the Chicago Bears, who will get a C+. So the Bears went into the draft cycle with the number 1 pick. They got a great haul for it. This grade does not take into account what they got for the number 1 pick. If it did, it'd be more like a B. This grade is just based on what they did during draft weekend. So they moved down 1 spot and got Darnell Wright. I don't really love the way they went about that. I think they should have picked Jalen Carter at 9. I get there's character concerns, and if that worried them, then I understand it. But the value there was really good. He could have been a phenomenal fit for their defense, and considering they drafted 2 interior defensive linemen on day 2, clearly that was a need, and clearly character is why they did not pick him. I do like that they moved back, but they didn't really get good value. I get it was only 1 pick, but to only get like a 4... I think they could have gotten more if they wanted to move back and still could have gotten either Darnell Wright or a significantly better tackle prospect like a Broderick Jones or Peter Skoronski. So I do like that they moved back and they got something to go from 9 to 10, but I would have picked Carter. And then with Darnell Wright at 10, I think that was probably the biggest reach of the first round. I've been saying Darnell Wright's going to go higher than you expect, and I was right. He ended up being the 10th pick, but should he have been the 10th pick? No. I'm not as high on him as other people. He was my offensive tackle 6 in this class, I think 6 or 7. Yeah, he was my offensive tackle 6, and he was the second one off the board. So the value there is just not great. Day 2, I thought they did fine. Gervin Dexter is somebody who could be really good, but he's got some work to do. Tyreek Stevenson in the second round is really the saving grace of this draft. I think that was a steal. He's going to be a good player. Zach Pickens in round 3 is fine. I don't mind doubling down on interior defensive linemen. You got to hope one of those guys is good because their front unit last year was terrible. Day 3, I thought they did fine. Roschon Johnson's a good pick, although I don't love it because Deontay Foreman's one of my favorite players in the league, and I think this kind of hurts his touches next year. But the pick itself, I don't have a problem with it. Tyler Scott, I think, is pretty solid value as well. So it's not, like, terrible. I think they redeemed themselves after what I thought was a pretty bad first round. But I can't really get them higher than a C+ because other than Tyreek Stevenson, there isn't really any pick here I love. And I think Darnell Wright at 10 is just a flat-out reach, in my opinion. But maybe he'll prove me wrong. The Jacksonville Jaguars will be getting a C+. I do like that they moved back twice in the first round. They navigated the draft board. They still got the guy they wanted while adding some day 3 picks. I'm good with Anton Harrison there. They lost Jawan Taylor. Cam Robinson is suspended. So I'm fine with it. I don't think it's a horrible reach. I would have really liked Brian Branch on this defense, but I don't have a problem with it. Day 2, I don't love. I thought that was a little bit early for Brenton Strange and Tanks Bigsby. I thought there were better running backs and tight ends on the board. I don't mind the idea of picking like an early down runner to complement Travis Etienne, but I probably would have gone somebody else there. Day 3, they had a lot of picks, and I think they did fine. Ventrell Miller in the 4th is solid. Antonio Johnson's good value late in the 5th. Parker Washington's a good player to get him in the 6th. I'm good with that, but I just don't love anything they did, so I'm going to give them a C+. It wasn't horrible, but I can't say I'm a huge fan. The Minnesota Vikings will be getting a C+. Honestly, I would have, at the bare minimum, strongly considered Will Levis at pick 23. I think that would have been appropriate value. The Vikings have been stuck in the middle with Kirk Cousins, so why not take a shot on a guy like Will Levis and see if he can pan out? I think that would have been fair value. But I don't have a problem with passing on him, and I don't have a problem with picking Jordan Addison. I thought there were slightly better options there. They really need help in the secondary. I would have loved Deonte Banks there. Joey Porter Jr. would have been a great pick. It's kind of similar to Baltimore. They had a big need at corner. There were two great corners staring them in the face. But I don't have an issue with Jordan Addison here. He's a good player. He's going to be able to contribute right away as a rookie, and he will be a great complement alongside Justin Jefferson. The rest of their draft doesn't really excite me. Mekhi Blackmon at the end of the third is fine. I think it's a little early, but it's fine. Jay Ward, Jacqueline Roy, fine on day 3. The one pick I do really like here down the board is DeWayne McBride, the running back out of the UAB, in the 7th round. I think that is ridiculous value. I think he's going to be a good player at the next level. If they trade Dalvin Cook, he's going to be their second best running back behind Alexander Mattison, a player who I'm very high on. Whenever Dalvin Cook is hurt, Alexander Mattison balls out. So I kind of hope they do trade Cook just so Madison gets his opportunity to shine, because I think he really will, but that's unrelated here to their draft grade. They're going to get a C+. It's not a great draft, but it could have been worse, I guess. The Dallas Cowboys will be getting a C grade. They picked Mazie Smith at 26. I don't mind it. I think he is a really good fit for them defensively. As I talked about earlier, a lot of the interior defensive line prospects I kind of grouped together in terms of talent. You could have gotten a guy like Keanu Benton in the 2nd if you moved up a little bit, or you could have gotten a guy like Adebawore later. So I think those guys would have been better value picks, but I don't have a major problem with Mazie Smith at 26. It's fine. Luke Schoonmaker and DeMarvion Overshown, I think, were picked a little bit early. I think there are better players at those positions on the board. Day 3, I thought they did fine. Fehoko in the 4th is cool. Asim Richards in the 5th is fine. Deuce Vaughn, obviously a fun player. The video with his dad, one of the Cowboys scouts, calling him was certainly really cool. But there isn't really a pick here I like, other than maybe Mazie Smith, but I don't love it, and nothing else here really stands out for me. So they will get a C grade. I imagine Buccaneers fans will not be pleased that I'm only giving them a C, but I think I'm a little bit lower on Kalijah Kancey than consensus. I do like the upside with him. He has intriguing athletic ability. He's got good explosiveness, could be a solid pass rusher down the line. But again, I've been talking about those 5 interior defensive linemen after Jalen Carter. I grouped them together, and I will say Kancey is probably the best of the group, but would I rather him at 19 or would I rather Adebawore in the 3rd round? Give me the latter all day, every day. It's not like I hate Kalijah Kancey here in a vacuum, but I think they could have gotten better value. In the 2nd round, Cody Mauch, I'm a little bit lower on him than consensus. It's not a terrible reach, but again, I can't say I really like it. Yaya Diaby in the 3rd round is fine. Again, I don't love it, but it's fine. Servasia Dennis in the 5th, I think that was probably their best value pick here. If not, maybe Trey Palmer, the wide receiver out of Nebraska. Jose Ramirez in the 6th round is also pretty good value. So they did it a good day 3. Even Payne Durham as well is pretty good value. And then in undrafted free agency, they shined my boy Sean Tucker, who I think is the best undrafted free agent in the class. It seems like he slipped because of a heart thing, which is obviously pretty scary. But if he can stay healthy, I am confident he will make the roster. He received a big undrafted bonus from the Buccaneers. And I think he could challenge to get a lot of snaps. I think this was a really good landing spot for Sean Tucker. As a big Sean Tucker stan, I wish he got drafted, but I'm happy for him. I think he's going to make that roster, and I think he's going to be a good player. Sean Tucker here does boost the grade a little bit, but it is only going to be a C. I don't really like their draft. I will be curious to see, however, if they prove me wrong. This is 2 years in a row where I've been pretty low on the New Orleans Saints draft class. Last year, I think I had them as the worst draft class. This year, I had them 30th. So at least they went up. I'm not a huge Brian Brzee guy. And again, as I talked about with Mazie Smith and Kalijah Kancey, there was better value later. You could have gotten Keanu Benton at pick 40. You could have gotten Adebawore in the 3rd or the 4th round. So I think those are better value picks. I think Brzee could be a good player, but I don't love it. I think Isaiah Foskey at 40 is a little bit early. Keandre Miller in the 3rd round, I think there were better running backs on the board. Nick Saldiveri in the 4th is fine. I think there were better tackles they could have picked. Jake Haener. I like Jake Haener. I think he's a good day 3 flyer, but I think there was a better quarterback on the board with Dorian Thompson-Robinson. Maybe the floor with Haener's a little bit higher, and they don't really need to take a big swing because they have Derek Carr under contract for 4 years. A.T. Perry, though, in the 6th is great value. I thought he should have been more of the 3rd or 4th round guy. But other than A.T. Perry, there isn't really a pick here I like. So they're going to get a C-. Another pretty disappointing draft for New Orleans. If there's anybody who deserves the benefit of the doubt, it is Brett Veach. He's developed 2 Super Bowl champion teams in a consistent power in the AFC. I mean, there's a reason why these guys have hosted, 5 AFC championship games in a row? That is ridiculous. Their past couple of draft classes have given them phenomenal impact early on. 2021, guys like Nick Bolton and Creed Humphrey have turned into superstars for this team. Last year, they had all those rookies in the secondary, and we saw what Isaiah Pacheco was able to do. So they've had some really good draft classes, but I don't think this is one of them. Felix Anudike-Uzomah was my lowest ranked player drafted into the first round, which, considering he was the last pick in the first round, is fine. I don't hate the pick here, but I thought there were some better pass rushers like B.J. Ojulari or Tuli Tuipulotu. Rashee Rice in the second round, I thought it was early for him. I'm not all that high on him, but he does kind of fit their prototype of a bigger outside receiver who can maybe complement Marquez Valdes-Scantling. Wanya Morris in the third round was fine. I don't really have a problem with that pick, but I don't love it, and I don't really love anything they did on day 3. Although I am kind of intrigued by B.J. Thompson. I think he could be an interesting flyer. So I'm going to give the Chiefs a C-. If I was a Chiefs fan, though, I wouldn't really sweat because you've got 2 rings, and there's no reason to think this team will be slowing down anytime soon. And I think some of these players will be good for them, but I just don't think this is a great draft class. The honor of my lowest rated draft class will go to the San Francisco 49ers, who will get a D+. To be fair to San Francisco, they did not pick until the 3rd round, but that doesn't excuse this draft class. I mean, look at Cleveland. Look how good they did with not picking until the 3rd round. They got an A. This is not an A draft really at all. You can make the argument that every single player that Cleveland drafted is better than anybody the Niners drafted, in my opinion. Jair Brown in the 3rd, I don't hate it. I don't think he's bad, but to move up for him when there were better safeties on the board, I don't love it. They picked a kicker, Jake Moody. Jake Moody's really good, and they do need a replacement for Robbie Gould. So, unironically, I thought that was one of their better picks. Cameron Lott, too, I thought that was early for him. I thought he shouldn't have gone on day 2. And then on day 3, they had some fine picks. Darrell Luter out of South Alabama is intriguing. D. Winters, Ronnie Bell. I don't love it, but again, as we talked about with the Chiefs, if I was a Niners fan, I wouldn't really worry because this team just made the NFC Championship. And once they figure out the quarterback thing, this team is going to be golden. So that is going to wrap up the episode. Let me know what you thought of my grades down below in the comments. It'll be interesting in a few years to see how this ages. I'm probably going to get some stuff right, and I'm probably going to get some stuff wrong. That's the fun of the draft cycle. So, again, let me know what you thought down below. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you are new. I appreciate you guys following along here throughout the draft cycle. It was another super fun draft here. I do want to do some more NBA draft content leading up to the NBA draft in a month and a half from now. I'm going to be obviously continuing the podcast with Nick and Ader as well. The next episode should be up pretty soon. So just because the NFL draft is over does not mean I am stopping this channel until next January. We still have some fun stuff planned. So I hope you guys are ready because it should be fun. Peace out.